Hey guys, and welcome to part 2 of Make.com Fundamentals. So now that we've set up your account and chosen a plan for you in part 1, we can now move on to the juicy stuff, which is going to be a quick intro to Make, and we're also going to go through Make's interface together so that you just have a better understanding of how to use Make. This lesson is going to consist of 4 main parts, you could say, whatever they're called. In the first part, we're going to go over what Make.com actually is, and then I'm going to tell you some important things you need to know before building to make sure you don't run into any issues later on. And then we're actually going to get to the fun part, which is going to be navigating the interface. We're going to go over where to find scenarios, templates, connections, things like that. And to finish it all off, I'm going to give you guys some key terms along with their definitions that you must understand. So that's enough yapping from me. Let's dive into the actual lesson. So first, what actually is Make.com? Well, let's start with the obvious thing. It is a no-code platform, meaning that you don't actually need any coding skills to use it. You can just drag and drop different modules, which are these circles right here, to build out your automations. It's super simple. Now, when you start getting into the more advanced stuff, like sending HTTP requests and JSON code, yeah, you might need a tiny bit of technical knowledge for that, but honestly, you can do so much without ever having to touch that side of things. With that said, one of the coolest things about Make, if not the coolest, is the integrations. It has over 2,000 pre-built apps or integrations, giving you so much flexibility of integrating anything with an API. Gmail, Google Sheets, Slack, Stripe, OpenAI, you name it. So basically, if there's a tool you're already using, there's a good chance that Make.com has it integrated, which means that you can use it in your own automations. Another cool thing about Make, and just automation in general, is the way you can just kick your automations off automatically. So you can either have your automations on a set schedule, so this automation is going to run every 15 minutes, or you can have it so that when something happens in an app, it then kicks off the whole automation. But I'll show you exactly how to do that a little later on in this video. Okay, so before we start navigating Make's interface and getting into the nitty-gritty stuff, I'm just going to tell you some important things you need to know before you start building your own automations. Which the first one is that Make uses operations, which means that every time your scenario runs a step, it counts as an operation. So this is a step, this is a step, this is a step. So each time it runs through each step, they will count as operations. So that's just something you need to keep in mind when running larger scale workflows. So if you want to make sure that you never run out of your monthly operations, in case you have very important scenarios that need to run consistently without breaks, you can come over to where it says extra operations auto purchasing and just activate it. And then you can select your payment method and just turn that on. Another important thing that you need to know is that Make gives you full execution logs and error messages. As you can see here, it says error, and you can access them all by going to this sidebar right here or heading over to the history tab, and you can just come over to details, and Make will show you exactly what went wrong and where the error occurred, so you can see the step that failed. Just try to fix it and try running the scenario again. So don't worry if you mess up on your first try, it's completely normal. I mess up all the time, so you just gotta have that mindset of each time you fail, you are one step closer to success. Alright, so now that we've gone over some important things you need to know, we can now quickly walk through the interface so you're not completely lost when you first log in. So when you first sign in, you'll land on this dashboard right here. It's going to look something like this, which is inside the organization tab. I have gone through a couple components of the organization tab in part 1, so I'm just going to show you the most important thing you need to know about this tab, and that is how to invite members to your organization. So you can do this by heading over to the users tab, and then here you can see all of the users. At the moment it's just going to be you, so if you press invite a new user, enter the user's email and their name, and then you can select their role. The two most important roles you need to know is admin and member. The admin role not only has access to all of these scenarios, it also has access to most of these settings and can manage other users in the organization, whereas the member role can only edit and create new scenarios. So if you are inviting new people to your organization, the member role is definitely the safest option. So you can just select the teams you want to invite them to, at least team, and then just press save. And boom, you're going to have another member inside of your organization, your team, whatever you want to call it, and it's going to look something like this. So that is probably the most important tab inside of the organization tab. I haven't really touched the other things, honestly. They're not that important. So we're just going to move on to the next most important tab, which is going to be the scenarios tab. Now this is the tab you're probably going to spend the most time on. You're going to have access to all your scenarios in one place. We also have some tabs up here, pretty self-explanatory. The active scenarios tab just shows you the scenarios that are on. Inactive, where you can see all the scenarios that are off. So to actually organize all of your scenarios, Make added the folders feature, which I think is pretty sick. So to add a new folder, just click this add button right here, and then you can put the name. I'm just going to put test for this demonstration, and then press save. And then to add a scenario to a folder, you would just go to the scenario that you want to add, press this little downwards arrow, and then press move to folder. And then from this drop down, you then select the folder you created, and then press move. And then when you come over to the sidebar, you're going to see all your folders here, and then you can press that folder, and then it's going to basically filter the scenarios that are inside the folder. And then if you want to delete a folder, just come up to the top right where it says options and press delete folder. Okay, so that is all you need to know about the interface of the scenarios tab. And now we're actually going to dive into the scenario interface, and I'm going to show you how a couple things work. So to create a new scenario, just go to the top right and press create a new scenario. And then you'll see this purple plus button right here. This is going to be your first module. So we're not going to build out an automation, that's going to be for part 3, but I'm just going to show you guys exactly how you're going to build the automation. So you can see all the apps we can use in this list. If I scroll down, you can see there's so many apps we can use, but you can search specific apps you want to add in this search box. So let's say I wanted to use ChatGPT in my automation. I would search up ChatGPT, and it comes up with OpenAI. I can just click on the OpenAI section, and it comes up with all the modules that OpenAI offers, but we're looking for ChatGPT. So it says create a completion prompt GPT and O103 models. So when we click on that, it's going to actually add the module to our scenario, and it's going to open up these settings. Here we can change the actual settings of the module. So if I then wanted to add another app, I would press on this add another module button right here, and it's going to create a link. And then let's say I wanted to add a Google Sheets module. You can see that Google Sheets is right here. And by the way, it's actually going to show you your most used apps at the top of the list. So I can press on Google Sheets. It opens up this section, and I can also see all the modules that they offer. So let's say I wanted to put the result of the ChatGPT module into a Google Sheet. I'm going to scroll down to update a cell because I want to update a specific cell with the result of the ChatGPT module. So I'm going to press on this module right here, and then you can see the settings it has. I'm just going to select a test spreadsheet, and the sheet name is going to be sheet 1. And then I need to provide the cell, and then I need to provide the cell in the Google Sheet. So it's going to be D3, something like this. And then there's going to be a value section, and this is going to be the value that the cell is going to be updated with. So if we open up the test Google Sheet, we can see that row D3 is this one right here. And I want to update D3 with whatever comes out of ChatGPT. So if I click on value, it's going to show up all the variables that are in the scenario. So we can see the ChatGPT module right here, and we know that this is the correct module because if I hover over a variable, it's going to start moving in the actual scenario. So we want to grab the result of the ChatGPT module, so I'm going to click on this variable, and you can see that it's been added to the value field. And now that's done, we can press save. And over in the ChatGPT module, I'm just going to select the model as 4.0, GPT 4.0 system, and we're just testing, so I'm going to add a message. Going to be user, it's just going to be test. It can be anything as long as we get an output. So you can just press save. Also make sure you save the scenario from time to time, because if you close a tab accidentally, you're going to lose all the progress if you don't save your scenario. I don't know why Make.com hasn't incorporated an autosave feature, but hopefully we get that in the future. So I'm going to run the scenario once, and it should give me a result from the ChatGPT module, and then it's going to put that result inside of this Google spreadsheet in cell D3. So let's run this once. Okay, and we got a result from ChatGPT, and we also got a result from Google Sheets. So let's see what ChatGPT gave us. If sure, I can help. Would you like to test or discuss? And then in the Google Sheets, it says spreadsheet ID, updated range, and how many updated rows it updated. So each time you run a step or a module, whatever you want to call it, you're going to get these little cloud looking things, and it's going to allow you to see the inputs and outputs of each module. Now this is super useful because you can basically debug what went wrong. Was it your input or was it the output of the actual module? Anyway, if we head over to the Google Sheet, we can see that cell D3 has been updated with the ChatGPT result. So we can now head back, and I'm just going to go through some things inside of this bar right here. Obviously, I showed you how to save the scenario. Each time you can just press save, and then you don't need to do much with these scenario settings either. The only setting I'd be worried about is the sequential processing setting. You only need to turn this on if you're using webhooks and the scenario needs to run one by one. Other than that, just keep this off. And once you're done, just press OK. And then this is one of the most important things in this bar. If you press the previous versions icon, you can basically pick an older version that you saved. So each time you save the scenario, it's going to store it as a version, and each time you want to recall a version, you can just press a save right here and then press OK. And it's basically going to say blueprint was restored. No changes are effective unless you save the scenario. So you can obviously just go to the most recent one and then press OK again. And then this auto align feature basically allows you to organize the whole scenario. And what I mean by that is, let's say you just, move them around a bit. Obviously, it's not going to be this bad, but you get the picture. And yeah, things can get quite messy very quickly if you're doing large scenarios. So if you want to just make sure you have a clear vision and you know exactly what's going on, you can just press this auto align button right here. And it's basically going to neatly align everything back into place, so you can see it is just way easier to understand what's going on. And now this is a very cool feature that Make.com has. If you press the three dots right here, you can ignore this explain flow feature. It's kind of useless, but the feature that I want to show you is the export blueprint and the import blueprint. This is cool because it allows you to import and export your own blueprints. It's kind of in the name. So you can import other people's pre-built blueprints, so you don't actually have to build everything out. You would obviously have to make your own connections though. And I'm going to show you an example right now. If I head over to my community, Automation Academy, and then go to the automation library, and then go to a Make.com tutorial. This one right here is Make.com. And scroll all the way down. I always provide the ready to use blueprint at the bottom of each description. So I'm just going to download this blueprint, and it's going to be a JSON file. I'm just going to download that. And then what I can do is just head back to my Make.com scenario. And when I press the more, and then press import blueprint, and then press choose file, you can see this blueprint JSON. And then just press on the blueprint that I just downloaded from the description and press save. It's actually just going to give me the full automation in my scenario. So you can also export your own automations when you're done with them by pressing the more, and then pressing export, and then pressing allow, whatever. And then other people can import your blueprint to their scenarios. And that JSON file also contains all of the information inside each module. So if I press on the Dropbox module, it has all the configurations fully done because I never touched this. With that said, if you've got HTTP requests and you've got API keys, please just remove them, or just put in brackets, this is where your API key should go, because you do not want to be sharing your API key with other people. So moving on, these icons right here are just modules and apps that are easily accessible. So you can see there's 3 here and 3 here. These 3 are just Make.com's tools, you could say. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of what each one means, but you can see there is the flow control right here, and each module to do with flow control, tools, and text parser as well. And then these 3 are just the modules that you use the most. So I use ChatGPT, Google Sheets, and Dropbox the most, and I can just easily access each module right here. But it is still just easier for me to right click anywhere and press add a module, and then just search up the module I need, or just click the recently used modules. And lastly, the logs just show you what happened in the scenario at what time. So now that we've covered these features, we can now move on to actually running the scenario and how scheduling works. So each time you want to test a scenario, you'd press this run once button right here. So if I just run this once, And you can see I got an error because obviously I haven't set anything up, I haven't set any folders up. So you can see that each time it's just going to give you a detailed error of what happened. And then you just try to fix the error and press the run once button again to test out if you actually fixed the problem. So now onto the scheduling. You can either access the scheduling by pressing the every 15 minutes here or whatever you set it to. And this is going to open up the schedule setting. Or you can go over to the first module and there's just going to be this clock icon. You can press that and it's going to open the tab as well. So we can change some settings. If you press the run scenario drop down, you can change the intervals. So let's say I want to run it every day at 6 p.m. I'd press every day and then I'd set the time to 6 p.m. It's a 24-hour clock, by the way. So I'd do that and that'd be 6 p.m. and I'll press save. And then you need to activate the scenario each time to make sure that it's actually going to run every day at 6 p.m. Okay, so you can also change it so that it runs the scenario, days of the week, days of the month, specific dates, on demand, you got a lot of options here. So on the topic of firing off automations, I'm going to show you guys how to fire off an automation based on an event that happens inside of an app. So if you press add a module, and let's say I go to Telegram, you can see that there's one called watch updates. That's instant. If I press on that and then just drag the clock icon over here, you can see that it changes to a lightning bolt. So if we press on the schedule setting, you can see that a new option comes up called immediately. Now what this does is if new data arrives in the Telegram bot, it's then going to fire off the scenario. You can see that it says immediately as data arrives and you can see that it's turned on. So that is the scheduling done. And I forgot to mention something, I should have gone over this earlier. If you want to duplicate a module, you right click on it and press clone. And this is going to clone the module with the exact settings as this one. And if you want to delete a module, you press right click and then press delete module. And also if you want to delete multiple modules, you hold shift and then select all the modules you want to delete. And then press the delete key on your keyboard. And if you don't know already, you can turn the scenario off and on by pressing this toggle right here. Or if we go outside of the scenario, come over here, you can see that this is the scenario we were working on. You can toggle it off and on by pressing this switch right here. So one more thing with these scenarios, when you save a scenario and you go back out and then you click back in, you can see that we get this little preview section right here. This is what I was showing you guys earlier. You can see the history on this right bar right here. You can also see the history when you come up to this tab. And then you can see the incomplete executions. We can now move on to the third tab that I want to show you guys, which is the templates tab. You'll be taken to a library of pre-built templates, which I think is pretty cool, but I've barely used any of these. You can search by a specific automation. So let's say I wanted to find a template that had Google Sheets involved. I'd search up Google Sheets right here, press the module. And then it's just going to filter through all of the automations that have Google Sheets integrated with them. So I think it's pretty cool, but I haven't used this much. And the last thing that I want to show you in the tabs is the connections tab. This is where you're going to manage all of the connections to your apps. You can delete, verify and edit each connection. And I'm going to quickly show you how to create connections to each app right now. If we head back to scenarios and we just go back to our TikTok agent. So you're going to have to create a connection to each app that you add. And you can do this by clicking on the app. And up here it will say connection. And you can simply press the add button. And then it's either going to ask you to sign in with your Google account, which is pretty easy. You just press sign in and then select your Google account and bam, it should be done. Or it's going to ask you to provide some sort of API key or a key of some sort. And that is going to be a bit more complex. I know Creator may use an API key. So if I add a connection, it's going to ask me for an API key, and retrieving the API key varies for each app. But 9 times out of 10, if you just search up the app, so it was Creatomate, and I search up API key, and usually the app is going to give you a step-by-step guide on how to retrieve this API key. If they don't, then that means that they might just not have an API key at all. But if the app did have an API key, they would usually want you to know anyway. So I might make a video on how to integrate, the top 5 most useful apps in Make.com. So yeah, comment down below if you want me to create that video. But now I'm just going to go through some key terms that were mentioned in the video and the definitions so you just have a better understanding of what the hell this actually means. So here we have some key terms for beginners. I'm going to provide this exact document in the description below. And the first term is scenario. A scenario is a full automation. It's the complete workflow from start to finish. These are all the scenarios. Think of it as your project made up of different steps. The next term is module. a module is one step inside a scenario. So for example, this Google Sheets module, watch new rows, examples, watch new email, create a row in Google Sheets, send a Slack message. You chain modules together to build your automation. And then trigger. A trigger is the first module in the scenario. It starts the automation. It could be something like receiving an email, a new row added to a spreadsheet, or a scheduled time. Our scenario just runs every 15 minutes. And then the action. An action is any module that does something after the trigger, like sending data or creating something. Example, send email, update record, post message. Number 5, connection. A connection is how you link Make to an outside app, like Gmail, Google Sheets, or Slack. You usually log in once to authorize access or use an API key. Then Make can send or receive data from the app. So for Creatomate, I used an API key, and now Make can receive and send data to Creatomate and use all the tools that Creatomate offers. And then operations. Operations are like automation credits. Every step your scenario runs counts as one operation. Free plans include a certain number per month, and each module run uses one. So each time this Creatomate module runs, it's going to use one operation from my 20k operations this month. And then last but not least, number 7, execution history. This is where you see what's happened in your scenario, including errors, what worked, and what data was processed. Super useful for debugging and learning. So you can access the execution history again by heading over to the history. And then like I mentioned last time, you can also see the details of each execution by pressing the details button. And you also get a log on the right here of exactly what happened on every single step. So again, I'm just going to provide this in the description below, so you can just go ahead and make a copy yourself and just learn these keywords. And also you can just use these as reference if you don't know what something means. So I hope this lesson was useful to you. So now you have a better understanding of how Make works and you're getting used to the interface. I hope you're excited for the next lesson, which is going to be building your first automation. And if you have any questions, just please let me know in the comments. Alright, thanks for watching and peace.